Okay, everybody, let's take a deep breath and close our eyes and breathe into this beautiful energy of this group tonight. And as we allow this course and all the guides who are with us tonight, all the departed beings, all the angelic beings who are with us tonight, to lift up our frequency, open our hearts, and pull us into the space of wisdom learning, of soul knowledge, and of true, open-hearted, unconditional love for self and others. This higher frequency is very difficult to keep in our everyday lives. But tonight, we can call it in with purpose, knowing that the guides always want us to grow and learn and evolve to be our highest and best selves. And so they have our backs tonight, and they will answer every question that is asked, and even those questions that are not asked, that all the correct wisdom and answers will come through all of us. And so it is. All right, this is Sue Frederick teaching our second class on sacred numerology. And I'm going to start with question and answer because I got some good ones here from you all. So one person asked about repeating numbers, saying, they always see 111 or on the clock 111, 1111. How many of you have that experience that you're always seeing certain numbers? Yeah, it's very common. And what I've learned is that it's unique. The meaning is unique to each person who sees it. Some people like to say, oh, universally, those numbers that you see mean this. But what I believe is that if you are seeing an 1111, it means that your guide and your departed are calling you to trust your intuition, to open your heart and quiet your mind and allow your sensitivity to inspire you and uplift you, and know that you're not alone. It's always a call up to a higher frequency when we see those numbers. I also like to think of it as a beautiful reminder that we are never alone, that there is always at least one or two higher beings and departed loved ones looking out for us. And when they feel we need a reminder of some kind that we are being guided and loved on, they'll send us those signals, those repeating numbers on license plates, on hotel rooms. And I always think it's so funny when I check into a hotel and my room number is 22, which is my path, or 11. And I always, when I see that, I go, oh, I'm being protected and guided. And it's interesting, when you stay in a hotel, I've found that whatever number you're assigned, it does sort of tell you the energy required in this stay, so to speak. Each trip you go on has a different frequency. You're being asked to hold a different frequency. So really pay attention to hotel room numbers like that. And also our homes that we buy. And, I really don't like the idea. Like, my realtor told me when we were buying this house that she had some clients, I think they were from maybe China, and they refused to even look at any house unless it had these certain numbers as the address. And so the realtor was kind of losing her mind over that, really hard to find these certain numbers in the same requirements that they had for their home. And I remember when we were looking for this house, the numbers to this house, when I kind of looked at them, I went, oh, okay, a lot of change will happen in this house, a lot of expansion, but it might not feel completely settled and peaceful. But yet, if it's meant to be your house and you feel that way when you walk into it, that means that that's what's being asked of you, and not to try to avoid it or run away from it. Maybe I've talked about this before with you guys, but always just say that the numbers are helping you. They are giving you an understanding of the energy you're trying to master at that moment, not ever something you should be afraid of or run away from or avoid a certain house with a certain number. There is no bad number. Every numbers are for our highest good, giving us instruction. Now, I will also say the number 13 has been interesting in my life because, I did not grow up superstitious about 13. I grew up Catholic and they didn't put any homage on that kind of superstition. And yet when I was in grade school, on a 13th, I broke my finger. Somebody kicked my hand and broke my finger, and it was the only bone I had broken all the way until 2018, and we moved here. And December 13th was the day we moved in, and I'm running upstairs to see the balcony and coming down, and I fell and I broke my foot. And it's pretty interesting that the two broken bones I've had have been on the 13. Also, Paul died on the 13th. He was diagnosed on a 13th, and he had a surgery on the 13th that came back where they said there's nothing they can do. He's going to cross soon. Now, you can look at that as good or bad. I look at it as simply a sign. And for me, what 13 means is pay attention. There is something important going on in this energy. And my daughter, who studies all of this stuff as well, has told me 13 is supposed to be a very spiritually powerful number in certain tarot and different things that she does. So just take note of how certain numbers show up in your life and what they point to. For me, I got to be careful about breaking bones on a 13 day. And I would say that if I ever have to have open heart surgery and they want to schedule it on the 13th, I will resist that. And yet I also know if it's meant to happen on that day, it will, because even with Paul's surgery, we didn't want to do it on Friday the 13th. So it had been scheduled for Monday of that week. And the doctor had to keep pushing it back and back and back until all of a sudden it was Friday 13th and there was no choice about it. So I just want you all to know the numbers are our friends, and they're always trying to just help us understand what's going on here and how to navigate it. Any questions about that? Okay. So the next question is, my birthday is February 9th, 1980. And using the linear method, I'm 11/2. Using the stacked method, I am 20/2. And using the single digit method, I am 20/2. And what this means, and she wanted to know, does it mean that I am sometimes an 11 or am I a 2? So these are the master soul numbers: 11/2, 22/4, and 33/6. If one of those ways, just like in hers, it shows up one of the ways that it's 11/2, that means that yes, her soul intended in this lifetime to step up to that 11 higher frequency vibration. So yes, Jamie, you call yourself an 11 path. Now, if it had shown up 2 out of those 3 ways, then it would show you that your soul wanted to step up to that higher frequency, pretty determined to do it in this life, and would have nudged you earlier in your life to really have to step up to it. Sometimes that means a hard nudge, like grief or something. If your 11 had showed up 3 out of those ways, then it would mean that you would be, I guess we could say, you would be having a life where you're more connected to the divine realms than you are to the earth realm. So Jamie, do you feel that with it showing up one way, that it really does reflect how you've connected with your spirituality, how and when you've connected to your spirituality.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can hear you now.
Thank you so much for clarifying that for me. I appreciate the insight. And yes, I do feel the 11. I'm feeling I'm at a crossroads and I'm being called to more service, and I just don't know what that looks like, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm a little overwhelmed with just ideas, because we have so much choice here in this life. So choosing the right next thing can be a little paralyzing
Can you
sometimes.
can you tell me your sun sign?
Aquarius.
And what is your age?
I'm 43.
Important. And let's see, 9, 10. Oh, you're in a 1 personal year. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Let me make sure. 9, 10, 11. Yes. Okay. Well, this is perfect. Let me just quickly explain this. Because you're just starting a new cycle, Jamie, yes, you're feeling all this choice in front of you. It's the farmer in their field with a lot of seeds to plant, not sure which one is the right one, but you need to plant them all, take baby steps in a lot of different directions and see what blossoms and pulls you forward. As an Aquarius 11, at this phase in your life, you should be owning the fact that you're a sacred teacher, that you have mystical gifts, and really stepping up to that 11, whether it's becoming a counselor, a therapist, a medium, really owning that and in changing how you make your living so that you are able to do that. The 1 personal year you're in is perfect for making the right choice. So what do you currently do for a living? Do you mind telling me?
Sure. I'm currently a graphic designer, but I have been very curious about entering a sort of counseling or therapist or coaching field. It's
Yes,
really
yes,
been on my
yes.
mind. Yeah,
That is
yeah.
a
So,
completely correct for you, whether you decide to go the conventional therapist route, which you'd be really good at, or more alternative route of coaching or intuitive work or mediumship. All of those avenues will blossom for you in this next 9-year cycle. And I want you to trust that, yes, it's time to do it. It's time to step up. So you just take an online class, you start looking into schools that have certain kinds of degrees and see if it's a possibility to do. But when we're in a 1 year, we have to take some steps forward in the new direction so that the whole 9-year cycle really prospers and brings us to our highest potential by the time the cycle is over. Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. All right, so let's see what else here. I had a really good question. Yes. Somebody wanted to know about how I combine numerology with intuition. This is such a great question. And I believe that even my beloved Suzanne took some of my intuitive coach training courses, and that's what we did in those courses is we learned to meditate on another person's numerology path, put our hand on it, call in the highest guidance for that person after we had their number there and their information, and then do automatic writing for that person. That's how I do my clients. And then you begin the conversation by sharing it from that higher perspective. So in other words, it's one step beyond just looking at the logic of the numbers. So if we go back to, who was that, Jamie? Like with Jamie as an Aquarius 11, I don't even remember how to separate my intuition from the numbers anymore, but I do know that when I first started studying the numbers, I was much more kind of by the book, like, this is what this number is about, and this is what logically you should be aware of. And as I evolved and called in many guides to help me, the numbers now with the sun sign around it are simply a portal to that information. And I would even say it's just a starting place, that you put your hand on that begins to give you the opening into their path. And then you just let it come through you. Now, this does require that you meditate and do sacred practices that quiet the mind, so that when it's time to tap into that intuition, your mind is not interfering. And how many of you do some form of mind quieting meditation? That's good. So those of you who don't do that, you've got to get going with that because it really will make a difference in you hearing your intuition. And then plus, we all have different ways that we bring in that information. So some of us are more clairaudient, some of us are more clairvoyant, more claircognizance. I know for me, the auditory comes first, and then the clairaudience, and then the claircognizance. So the way I describe that is I hear a voice telling me things, and I start to write it down, and then it just comes through so quickly. And then when I'm working with the client, it's just a knowingness. It bypasses the mind, it bypasses the sound, and it just becomes a knowingness, and that's claircognizance. So every person has their own way of getting it. And some people are very visual, and they'll say, I'm seeing this and I'm seeing that for you. And for me, that might come in later in the conversation, but it always starts with the auditory, with the voice. And also, I was a writer for many years, and I look back on that, and I realize now that I was always hearing that voice, and that's what I would write when I was a journalist, when I was a magazine editor, when I would write all my books, that clairaudient voice coming in. And the more you allow that sense that is very strong in you to just pour through without editing it, without censoring it, the more your intuition just takes off and amazing things come through you, and you're just the witness to it. Does that answer your question? I can't remember who asked me that, so you have to unmute.
I asked that, and yes, it does. It does. I'm curious if for you, do you just know like the 11-8 or like you've learned that, or even is that just coming through to you too?
You mean the numbers themselves?
Yeah, so when you tell the different life paths or person, like
I
those
always start by calculating the path, and that's because that's my history since 1980. And I definitely, it's almost like doing that calculation opens the portal for me. And even if I'm doing it on my calculator now that I have on my website, it works the same way. Like the minute I start to see the numbers, I just like get all excited, like, oh, yes, and it just starts pouring through. It's very interesting because a lot of my friends here in Phoenix are traditional mediums. Like they don't work through the numbers. They simply say, I'm hearing this spirit, or I'm feeling this spirit. And I always watch them do that. And I'm like, gosh, that's so different from me. Like I want to call in the spirit through the numbers just because it's how I learned it, so many decades ago. And once I open that portal, then yes, I'll even hear and feel and see the departed loved one. But I love getting the birth path of the departed loved one. Before every client, I always say, who are you grieving for? Please send me their date of birth. And and then I figure out their path, and that opens a huge portal for me to be able to say, oh, and now I've connected to your departed, and I've written pages from them. If I could show you guys I don't think I have any on my desk, but for every client, if they're grieving, I've downloaded 3 or 4 pages of yellow legal pad writing from their departed for each client. And that starts with the numbers, because I ask for that when they're signing up. And it's funny because some people have come to me to do a session and I ask for the date of birth of their departed, and they'll go, well, that's not right. You can't ask for that if you're a medium. And I'll say, no, I'm not that kind of medium. I work through numbers. But if you give me that date of birth, I can fall through that energy and connect to them. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Okay.
The biggest thing is for everybody to find how you work best. You know, everybody has their own unique way to connect to higher sources, to connect to spirit, to connect to departed loved ones. So really let your body and your senses and your abilities teach you how to do this, because the way I do it might not work at all for you. But I know there's a way that does work for you, because it works for everybody in their unique way. Okay. I wanted to do, I know I said I was going to do the personal years, but I want to start with the name number. And don't worry, we will get to the personal years, but the name number I think is very important. So in your PDF or your workbook, I hope you've had a chance. Oh, one other question. Did any of you go and look at your soul agreement numbers with people that we talked about last week? And did you have any questions about that? I can't see anyone, so you got to unmute if you have a question.
I think this is Trisha. I
Hey,
think
Trish.
my only question would be if my soul or my agreement, for example, with my husband, it is a certain number, then it's basically the spirit of the number that you very first presented is the spirit, so to speak, in general of our relationship.
So I have your folder, your soul agreement with your husband is the number 5. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that 5 means passion and change and adventure and courage, a lot of action, sort of, to speak. It's very different energy from, for example, if your soul agreement were the 11, which is a quiet, intuitive bond. And if your soul agreement were 7, it would be about spiritual growth and intellectual analyzing of life, that kind of conversation. So the 5 has the vibration of change and sensuality and passion and maybe arguing, but also loving each other. It's loud and full of life. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yep. So it sounds like kind of what I thought. I got it. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetie.
I did mine. It was a 2.
Mm-hmm. I guess I should stop.
That's mine.
Let me get out of
It
here.
says Miss Schaefer on it because I'm a teacher. I don't know how I did that out, but
Okay, so you have a 2 soul agreement with your who?
with my with Justin who died.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you clearly.
Oh, sorry, Justin. He
Just-
died. He passed away. But he was my fiance.
Yeah, but I think you have an 11, if I remember correctly. It's an 11-2 soul agreement.
I just started dating somebody that's an 11.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, but
I don't know why. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure that you and your fiance have an 11/2 soul agreement, because I remember talking to you about that last week. But whether it's an 11 or a 2, it means that you have a very good connection with them, very intuitive, very right on, very easy, very sensitive. It continues beyond the veil that way, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So anybody else, or do we go on to the name number now? All right. we're going to move on. The name number is fun, but I will also say that people can kind of go down the rabbit hole with it, because you're going to put in a ton of different names. And actually my web guy is working on a name number calculator, so that on my website in the next month or two, you'll be able to input your different names and get all these different numbers from it. Because when you do it, every vowel has a numerical equivalent. So if we go to this page, so for example, A, J, and S are 1 vibration letters. B, K, and T are 2 vibration letters. CLU is 3, DMV is 4. And it's funny because in the 80s when I was doing this, I was obsessed with doing people's name numbers, and you can memorize it because there's so many interesting, like Clue and driver Department of Motor Vehicles and Fox. And, there's just a lot of ways you can memorize this, so that you can just sit down and do it randomly at a restaurant if you're going to dinner with somebody. Or you can map it out the way it's mapped here on the screen. And then once you get that figured out, then I'll go back to this page, your vowels of your name, that they express your soul's longing, meaning what you're longing for. So the number that comes from the vowels added up in your name show what your soul is longing for. That when you add your consonants in your name together, they show your personality number, how you come across in this physical world. And then when you total those two numbers, you get your essential life vibration number. Then you can also calculate the missing numbers, which show different challenges and gifts. So go to the example here. So my friend Jane had and her name is here. When I was taught to do it, I was taught to put the vowels above the name, so that you're doing the numerological equivalent of the vowel above the name, and then you add it along this line. And then you do the consonants beneath the name, and you add that along this line. And then you add all the total numbers here to get 38. So her heart longing was the 4, to be strong, to do hard work. And yet her personality number was the 6, kind of life of the party, and very loving and beautiful, and kind of distracted by other people, pulled off of her center. And then her essence number was the 11, a very sacred vibration. So you do this for your own name, and then also look at the missing numbers. So Jane, for example, was missing 4s and 8s. 4 and 8 had 0. And then she had the most 5s and the most 1s. And what that tells you, again, it's kind of a gestalt of what it tells you. For example, I was missing in my birth name almost all of the numbers. I had many 5s, and I had many, I think, 7s. And other than that, I was missing so many numbers here. And so my numerologist told me, she said, you agreed to come here with a wide open heart and experience a lot and learn and evolve. And that shows up in how many missing numbers were in your birth name. But by changing my name to Sue Frederick, I filled in a lot of those missing numbers. And what she taught me is, it doesn't change my path and what I'm here to learn, but it changes how people perceive me, which was really good in a way, because it got me, she explained it as, your birth name feels hollow, like you're not going to be a powerful person. You won't get the job, so to speak. You're shy. But when you do Sue Frederick, it has a whole different vibration and you get the job and people respect you right off the bat from meeting you. So that's the kind of frequency that you can tell in your name number and how it affects you. So on this page, you can do your name and you can calculate what you're missing and how many of such and such is in here. And again, you have this little graph up here to remind you of what the names are, the numbers are. So I'm ready for the questions because I know this can be confusing, that the name numbers can. But what questions do you have about it?
I have one. So it's like I'm a 33-6, but I'm missing 6.
Oh,
in all this.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was missing 4s and that's my path. So what my numerologist taught me in 1980 was whenever you're missing the number of your path, it's like, whoa, you really agreed to come in on a path that you were completely unfamiliar with. It was going to be a whole journey of learning for you. I mean, it was not an easy life, you know, and Sherry, I know your life. Your life has not been easy either. And, you know, we signed up for the hard stuff. We were determined to grow and evolve in this lifetime. My numerologist was kind of blown away by my name. You know, she was like, God, I've never seen a chart like this except Yoko Ono, you know, and we all know that Yoko Ono was one of the most hated people in the world in the 60s, and she didn't really deserve it, but it was just this intense energy of her presence that shook so many people up. And when we're missing a ton of our numbers in our name, that's how we affect the people around us feel and pick up our energy. So
I'm like you. I have lots of 7s and lots of 5s, which my son was a 5.
yes, well, the good news about that is that the 7s, for me and for you, our spirituality was always there for us. And I know for me, even as a Catholic growing up, I felt the presence of God. I felt the presence of angels. I felt the presence of loving spirits. That was never a question to me. And I just know that without that, I couldn't have survived and thrived in this lifetime. So you do set it up for yourself in a way that you will succeed. And that's the thing. We all choose this. Our souls determine how we're going to come in, what vibration our name will hold, what vibration our birth path will launch us on. And we never sign up for something we can't fulfill, that we can't live up to the great potential of it. That your guide would never approve that plan for you. So does
Thank
that,
you.
anybody else have questions?
I have a question about the soul's longing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just talk about like what that means
Yeah.
exactly? And,
So
like,
my vow adds up to the number 7. So my soul's longing is God. Spirituality has been my whole life. And that is very much reflected in that 7. Like all I want to do is go on retreat, you know, but the world pulls me in because I'm on a 22-4 birth path. But if I were just left to, you know, having a great, if I had been born into a lot of money and had not had to find a way to survive financially in this world, I would have probably gone and lived in an ashram in India or something, you know? And yet the great contrast of being pulled into the world on the 22-4, which is all about work, everything is centered on work, career, and the longing to be in the presence of God, to be a mystic, to be in pure communication. That set up the dynamic that caused me to be who I became in this lifetime. Does that kind of answer that for you?
yeah, I think so. Is that are the numbers listed in the book?
Oh, the numbers are the same as when we talked about them last night. So if your soul's last week, if the soul's longing is Val number is the number 1, then you long for independence and to be on your alone path, your own unique independent self. That's who you want to focus on. And if your soul's longing number is the 11 or the 2, then it's about connection with people and connection with intuition. If it's the number 3, then it's about being playful and creative and communicating with people, being in the community as a artist or a talker or someone very in the midst of people and connection and creativity. If your soul's longing is the number 4 or the 22-4, you're longing for significant and purposeful career and work, as well as strength, physical strength, and emotional strength. If your soul's longing number is the number 5, you're longing for change and freedom and adventure and courage and all of that great stuff. If your soul's longing is the number 6, you want to be with people, family, community, and be loving and supportive and nurture those people in your life. You can be happy just being at home with family. If your soul's longing is the 7, like me, you've been longing for the presence of God and knowing that presence since you were a child. If the soul's longing is the number 8, then you are longing to be powerful in the world. And that's sometimes a very tricky lesson because you're going to be pulled out into money and power and have to learn to handle it correctly. If your soul's longing is the number 9, then you're longing for the greatest big picture understanding of the wisdom of life and why you're here. You're longing for the hardest and deepest wisdom and knowledge that a human can attain in a lifetime. So it works like that. Personality is similar. I've always joked my personality number is also a 7. So my soul's longing is a 7 and my personality is a 7, which essentially means I don't have a personality. And it is really true. I don't have a personality. I am just, over the years, I've gotten more outgoing and all of that. But the 7 is a very turned inward energy, a very self-reflective, seeking spiritual truth. When I was doing my time in the ashram, my personality fit in great there. Like when we would do 4 days of silent meditation, I was happy as I could be. I didn't have to have small talk with anyone. So the personality number is interesting because we sign up for that personality number, knowing that sometimes it's going to be a difficult personality and that will attract to us the right lessons that our soul is trying to learn. And then your essential vibration, mine is the number 5. I long for freedom and change and adventure and courage. And because I'm on a 4 birth path, that's a very rare thing that I get to experience a vacation and that sense of freedom. But it's okay. I signed up for this in this life. And so when you look at the big picture of what all these different components mean and how they balance out in your playbook and how you navigate life, then you get that bigger understanding of what you've come here to learn and be. I would also say that I don't do name numbers with my clients because I learned early on in my work with clients that it would just confuse them, that at the end of the day, the most important thing I wanted to impart to people is the soul mission that comes from the birth path, from the date of birth, because our ultimate question usually is, why am I here? What is my purpose? And that is answered through the birth date, through the birth path or the soul path. And especially if you're grieving, that's a very essential question. Why am I here? And so focus on the birth path as the most important piece of information. You can play with the name number for fun, especially when you're naming children. You know, by the time I had my daughter, Sarah, I was doing numerology for decades. And it's so funny because I wanted to give her a life that would have no problems. And I gave her like 4 names so that she would have no missing numbers. And yet the truth is, of course, she's got challenges and all of that. But it doesn't, when you meet her, you don't sense any of that. You sense her as being very strong and very smart and very funny and likable. And you don't sense all of those missing numbers that I carried with me on my journey. So, and then let's see, I wanted to come here. So when you do your number, try to get used to doing your name this way: vowels on top, consonants on the bottom. And, you know, you're going to do all of this together as the essential vibration. And remember that when you do this, that the missing numbers will tell you parts of your life that you need to develop more and pay more attention to. All right, any questions, or do you guys want to go on to the Pinnacle cycles, which are really informative?
Sounds good.
Okay, so the Pinnacles are really, really helpful because I don't even need to tell you why, because you'll understand it when you do it. It's kind of an overarching energy that will affect your life for a large number of years. And when I've gone back and looked at this lifetime of mine, and I see those certain pinnacle numbers over different phases of it, it's so completely accurate. But the formula is a little confusing. So you just need to follow this sheet here. To get your first pinnacle number, you add your month of birth and your date of birth. So in my case, my month of birth is September and my date of birth is the 15th. And when I add those two together, I get the number 24, and I add those two together and I get the number 6. So my first pinnacle number is the number 6. I hope you're all doing that right now and you've all got your first pinnacle number. All right. And then we go to the second pinnacle number, and I'll explain this in a minute, but just go with me here on this. The second pinnacle number, you're adding your day of birth and your year of birth. So the day of birth for me is the 15th. The year of birth is 1951. You add all of those together and you come up with 1966. You add those numbers together and it comes up with the number 22/4, which, as you know, is also my birth path number. The third pinnacle number, did somebody have a question just now?
No, sorry, that was me. I mumbled.
Okay, it's all right. The third pinnacle number, you add the first pinnacle number up here, you can see it's 6, and you add that to the second pinnacle number, and you get the single digit of the 1. So that was my third pinnacle. I'm currently in my fourth pinnacle of life, and that comes from adding my month of birth, September, which is 9, to my year of birth, 1951, which is 16, which is 7. So the pinnacle I'm under now is 7. And when and then you've got this formula that you could just look at and see, your birth path number. So find your birth path number in this column and it will tell you. So for example, my birth path is 4. And that means that my first pinnacle, which was the number 6, would run until I was 32 years old. And then my second pinnacle number, which is the 22/4, would run from the time I was 32 until I was 41. Now, what's so interesting about that is this phase is when I became a somewhat well-known and celebrated writer. And I was in the natural health industry, became editor of magazine and websites, kind of a voice for natural health and healing. And I was paid really well to do it. And that was a 22-4 Pinnacle, which meant that my path of my life aligned with the Pinnacle number I was under. And that's a very powerful thing when that happens. Then I hit probably the hardest time of my life, my third Pinnacle, which ran from 41 to 50. And that Pinnacle number for me was the number 1. Well, what happened to me then? Single mom, went through a divorce, lost my career as a writer because of the .com crash. So from the age of 41 to 50, I was trying to launch my own business. I had no one helping me in any way, no one loving me in any relationship, being a single mom, like, up all night with a sick kid and then having to work the next day and no one to help me. And I felt so alone at that time. And I wondered if I was always going to feel that alone. And then I actually met Gene, my current husband, as I turned 50. And look at that, 50 was the end of that 1-year Pinnacle. And then I went into my that number 1 Pinnacle. And then I went into this last one, which is my 7. 7 is about spirituality, intuition, inner reflection, writing, kind of everything I'm doing in my work and career and have been doing for 23 years is all reflected in that number 7. So it's very insightful, and it will also tell you when things are going to change in your life. So if you have any questions about it, ask me now, but this is a very helpful piece of information for people.
I have a question, sorry.
Okay.
Is it okay, or is it weird that your Pinnacle numbers are the same, like for 3 years in a row?
Oh, that's really fascinating, Sherry. Is that what yours are?
Yeah, I've got 999 and then 3.
Oh my God, what an old soul you are. My gosh. You're under the influence of the number 9, the highest lessons, the highest insight, the highest accomplishments, and a lot of surrender and letting go as well. And so what Pinnacle are you in right now?
So I'll be 65 this year. So I don't know. That's
So you're a 33-6 life path. So we come here. Your life path is 6, and you said you're going to be how old this year?
I'll be 65 in June.
So you're under the 4th Pinnacle. And what is the number of your 4th Pinnacle?
That's the one that's a 3. All the others are 9s.
Wow. So that's a big difference, the 9 and the 3.
Yeah.
So the 3 is about community and connection and communication and creativity and all of that. How have things shifted in this Pinnacle as far as you can tell?
But when did it start? When do they start the Pinnacle on?
Well, yours started at the age of 48.
Oh, my whole life has changed.
Yeah, I understand. But, it's kind of nice that your final Pinnacle is the number 3, because 3 certainly is a lot more fun and creative and peppy than if, for example, if it had been a 1 as your final Pinnacle.
Yeah, I have 9 showing up everywhere, and it's so strange. My whole life I felt like a 9 was my number, and I don't know why.
Well, yes, because you're intuitive. It's exactly right.
Yeah, that's very weird. This whole thing, I'm just getting 9s.
So old soul wisdom. Any other questions about this?
Sue, I have the same thing, Suzanne.
Mm-hmm.
I have 999 and then 4.
Oh, wow. And what Pinnacle are you in right now?
I'm in my 4th.
So it's the number 4.
Yeah.
Oh,
means I have to work hard, huh?
Or getting strong, getting your inner outer strength as well.
Yeah.
But your 3 first Pinnacles of 9, that tells me so much about you, about your wisdom, your insight, your spirituality, always being your strong calling, and then relationships, you know, that you never could settle for a partner, that it just didn't resonate with you. And that's the number of the 9, also letting go and moving on. And then now you're in the 4, which is about finding your place on the earth with power and strength and resilience. To me, that feels perfect for getting your health in gear as well, because 4 is the number when we get strong and we get healthy and all of that stuff. So that really is, I think that's kind of wonderful.
Well, what you said about the 9, that resonates a lot with me.
Yes, that 9 Pinnacle can just keep you moving on, you know, moving on to the next phase. All right, any other questions about these Pinnacles?
I have a question.
Yes.
So my life path number is the 4th Pinnacle.
Mm-hmm. So
that-
what is your life path number? Remind me.
A 6?
A 6, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, so your life path is the 6, and now you're in your 4th Pinnacle. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I just didn't know the connection. I had a 9, a 5, and then a 6. And
Mhm.
my life path number is a 6. I'm 46, so I'm not
Ah,
48 yet.
so right
I
now
thought that
you're
was-
in a 6 Pinnacle. Is that what you're saying right now? 6 Pinnacle?
I just thought it was interesting that the 4th Pinnacle being the 6th life path, or the 6th, and that's my life path number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Is
just,
there a connection with that? Or?
yeah, I don't know why I can't hear you very well, but there's
Oh.
some kind of an echo in your sound. But I think what you're saying is that you're a life path 6, and right now you're in the 3rd Pinnacle, which is also a 6. Can you just say yes or no if that's correct?
No, 5 I'm now, but my 4th Pinnacle is a 6. So my
Oh.
last Pinnacle is a 6.
So that'll be a great final phase of your life, that you're going to be aligned with your life path number. That'll be a very powerful final pinnacle of your life. And it will have to do with family and home and love and all of that good stuff. So that's a really cool way to wrap up the lifetime in the number 6. Opening the heart.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
Well,
right.
you start with your life path and you read the chart across. Is that how it goes?
Yeah. So for example, if you're a life path 1, you move across this way.
Okay.
If you're a life path 2 or 11, it's the same, whether it's here or it's down here. I haven't mapped out. They're the same.
Oh,
But-
so each of those age groups, then you see what your number falls in.
Right.
Ah, I got it now. Thank
So
you.
for example, I'm the life path 22-4. So this is how long my first pinnacle lasted, and it was a 6. And then my next pinnacle was a 22.
Ah,
My next pinnacle was a 1, and my next pinnacle was a 7, is a 7.
oh, wow.
So it's very helpful, I think, to look at that, because it does give you the overall vibration and also the overall solution. And what I mean by that is the answer to all of my problems in my older final cycle is always connecting to spirit, always turning inward, always doing the inner reflection. It's not an outward facing time in my life. And that is true. I work from home. I'm working with clients all the time, but I sometimes don't leave my house for a week, you know, and I'm good with that. And it's all about connection and spirit and intuition and writing and channeling. So it just really informs what you can be at peace with in your life. Like, okay, if it's going to be this way, then I'm happy that it's this way. I won't long for it to be some other way.
So why do you have an 11 and a 22, but not the 33?
Yeah, that was a mistake. But what I will say is the 33 is the same as the
same as
6.
six.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your 33 path, these are your pinnacles right here. All right. Any other questions about these? We can go on to personal year cycles.
Sue, I'm sorry, I had a quick question.
Yes.
If I'm sorry, I'm digressing just a little bit, but on your life path number, is it possible to have lived the qualities of that in its lowest expression in the beginning of your life? For example, with a 5,
Oh, yeah.
and then you're moving into a different phase of the 5 expression?
Yeah. And that's often our arc of learning. So, for example, we're
Oh.
all here on an arc of learning, which means that at the beginning of our life, we're usually functioning from maybe a lower end of the vibration of our birth path. So for me, you could express that as in my 20s, I taught mountaineering. I was focused on exterior strength, right? And an emotional strength, but not really spiritual strength and shifting consciousness. And so as I've evolved and grown, you know, I'm more into the higher frequency of the 22-4 of my path. And that is all of our arc of learning. And if you've come in on a 5 path, then yes, in the early part of your life, it would have been a very physical journey, passionate, perhaps addiction. All of that is perfect, though. No judgment. It's exactly what you came to learn about. And as you evolve on the arc of learning, you learn to center yourself and only pick what serves your highest good. And that's why when we go to the council, when I do the divine meditations to go talk to our guides, one of the questions we always ask is, what is my arc of learning in this life? And the guide will say, well, you're trying to learn such and such, you know, and that shows that arc of learning. And then the next question is, well, how am I doing on that? And the guide will always say something like, well, you could work on this or that a little bit more, you know. And so yeah, everything is an arc of learning. We don't come in having mastered our birth path. That it would be no purpose in that. There would be no learning. And we come in on the exact path that our soul needs to learn and embrace. And even if it's really hard, bumpy road for a while, it's the perfect journey for your soul. And that really helps us understand, you know, gosh, I came in here resisting this lesson, resisting being that certain way. And over time, I learned to grow into it. And that's what our souls are trying to do here.
I think one of the things you mentioned about a 5 is that there's a lot of choice and change. And my missing number is a 4, which I feel like is this ability to really focus and stay with it.
Yeah.
Because I'm shiny thing.
That's right. I love that. I mean, I love a 5-path soul, though, because they get pulled into all these shiny things and shiny people and shiny opportunities, because their lesson is choosing only from highest good.
Yes, thank you.
On the 4, you'll feel a lot more like you're struggling to achieve something, struggling to learn something, struggling to be strong and learn strength. But the 5 is a very different energy. It all comes to you.
Thank you for that.
Any thoughts, reflections, insights, or questions?
Sorry, you said the numbers that we are missing in our names are the areas we need to focus on, right? Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yeah. And, you know, if you're missing a whole lot of numbers in your name, the name you had at birth, it means that, I mean, I think I've told you guys that there are many people who've taught me that there are 3 sources of our soul, 3 origins. One is the angelic realm souls. Number 2 is the earth-based souls. And number 3 is the interplanetary souls. I'm clearly from the angelic realm, because when I got here, I had no idea how to function here. And that is even reflected in my missing numbers. It wasn't like anybody as a child ever looked at me and said, oh, she's an old soul. They just kind of looked at me and thought, she's weird, you know? And so my learning about life has hopefully filled in a lot of those missing numbers. But there are times when I still feel that. I feel like, gosh, I'm the last person on earth to understand what's going on here, you know? Any thoughts on that, Suzanne? I'm looking at your beautiful face, wondering if you have some comments or questions about it.
I was just going to say that I did the soul regression with you. I think twice, actually.
Yeah.
It was so amazing. Like, if anyone wants to do something really awesome, that was very insightful for me and really helpful, because I was at a point in my life where I wasn't expected to live at all, like terribly sick. And I did it from my hospital bed when, I mean, seriously, could hardly talk. I was that sick. And it really helped me because my spirit guide, Sue said, ask the significance of your illness. And my spirit guide said, what illness?
Right.
That was amazing. And anyway, it turned out to be like, you know, I'm not sick. I'm going to be well. But anyway, it was, that was just a tidbit of it. But if you guys want to do something really cool, it's really very awesome.
Is that
Suzanne,
the same as the past life regression?
yeah, the past life
Okay.
regression.
I'm signed up for that. So.
Yeah. And Suzanne, that was my greatest honor to go with you on that journey. I love going with people because I get to go too. And I'm in that more exalted state. You know, every day when I get to do a client who's either just doing the visit to the divine realms, the 90-minute session, or the 2-hour soul regression, I get lifted into it as well. It's so extraordinary. I mean, I can be tired. I could have had a sleepless night, and I get to go and do that with a client, and I am in those divine realms with them, and I'm seeing it all, and I'm hearing the guides, and oh my God, what a blessing to be able to do that almost every day. So Suzanne, it was my honor to do that with you. I'll never forget that. You're doing it from your hospital bed.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I remember there were
Thank you.
nurses coming in and trying to talk to you and arranging things on your IV and everything. And you were just on your laptop in bed doing another lifetime with me.
Yeah. More important than all that other stuff.
Yeah. And you're so beautiful, Suzanne. And you're just, you know, this year is going to be the year that you really finally just pull it out of that illness dip. And you're the shining teacher, the shining soul that you are.
Well, that was part of my soul regression, wasn't it? It was like, if you want to keep doing what you're doing, then, you know, it's no judgment. You've just finished your work here.
Yeah.
But if you want to do this other work, then you can choose to stay.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've chosen to do. So.
And that's a good point, you know, that we do have certain soul choice exit points. Suzanne, you and I know that that was a choice point for you. And you and your guides decided, no, you're going to stay. And you even went back and did an addendum, which is one of the things I'll never forget as long as I work, where you went back there with me more recently and you said, I want to talk to the council. I'm going to do an addendum to my life plan. And your guide even said, oh, that's beyond my pay grade. Yeah, we got to take you to the council for that. And you really created a whole new future for yourself. And that is so cool and so awesome, you know, because we often think, oh, well, if it's my exit point, it's my exit point. But the truth is we have a few different exit points that are choice points, and our souls kind of reach a point where we are visiting and with the divine, and we say, you know, if I'm done, have I accomplished what I came to accomplish? Have I achieved it? Or if I stay, will there be significant growth for me? And can I stay for that? And so that is negotiated in that choice point. So you all have more control. That's why I always say the soul entry into the lifetime and the soul exit out of the lifetime are the soul's choice. It's not the conscious mind, because people will go, oh, my husband didn't want to die. Well, not consciously, but his soul had decided that he had either accomplished what he had come to do, or he had gone as far as he could go in this lifetime. And, you know, that's something that's hard for our conscious minds to accept. But I also know that with our departed children, often what it is that they're such highly evolved souls. They came into a very compressed, intense lifetime, and they did accomplish what they needed to do. And part of their agreement with their family and their loved ones was to break open the whole posse to a higher level of growth and understanding by being the one to leave early. And it precipitates incredible pain and also incredible growth in that group of souls. So everything has a divine order to it, and we can seek that divine order out, whether we're doing meditation, numerology, automatic writing, traveling to the divine to get insights and guidance. However we're doing it, we can seek out that higher wisdom and understand it from the bigger picture rather than the detail, the minutia detail. So, okay, questions or comments or what from here?
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't, 7:30. I think I would like to save the personal years for next week, unless you all have already done your personal year charts. Have you done that? Most of you. You have?
I have.
Well, then maybe we should go and look at that now. So let me just share my screen again.
You mean the birth path chart, the
Yeah,
whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do that yet.
Well, let me just get you started with it. So it's every year of your life, you're under a different vibrational number in your personal year chart. And it'll be 1 through 9, but also it could be an 11, a 22, or a 33. So these 9-year cycles, our soul is required to grow here. And so these 9-year cycles coming from the personal year reflect our different personal growth cycles. So the way you add your personal year now, it works on the soul path calculator on my website. You already got that number. And if you've forgotten it, go back to my soul path calculator and you'll get your age, you'll get your birth path, your age, and your personal year. So for example, in my birth date, you add the month, which is the 9, and the date, which is the 6th, the date and month of my birth, to the current calendar year, which right now is 2024, which is an 8. So that would be adding 9 and 6 to the 8, which puts me in a 5 personal year. Very good to remember that, because maybe I will get a vacation this year. But that means this year is my 5 personal year. So there's your formula right now. You can do it very quickly on that sheet or on a piece of paper and just get that personal year. And I kind of want to know if you all have that before I go on and explain what these mean.
And we can get it from that calculator.
Yes. So if you
Okay.
go into the calculator,
Got it.
yeah, it'll tell you that right by your age. Okay. So everybody kind of have that. Say no if you have a question. All right, good. You're all geniuses. So when we're in a 1 personal year, just like I was telling, who was the Aquarius 11 that I was talking to? That was
me, Jamie.
Jamie, right. So Jamie's an example. She's in a 1 personal year. A 1 personal year is a new beginning of a cycle, and everything is a challenge and a gift. When we hit the 1, we can feel overwhelmed with a sense of new direction, but not exactly sure what that new direction is. And, you know, I always go back to that metaphor of being the farmer standing in an empty field in the spring, not quite sure what's going to grow this year, but you've got to go plant seeds. And then the ones that are meant to grow will blossom. So in a 1 year, you take some classes, you try some new things, and the right direction will pull you forward. But you don't want to have inaction in a 1 year. You don't want to be stagnant. And then, but a 1 year, the challenge of the one is also you might feel kind of all alone in these choices, in this new beginning. It can feel lonely. And then you hit the 2 personal year, and the 2, suddenly people are working with you, like they're coming into your life to help you with your work or to be in a relationship with you. It's a much softer energy. And if it happens to be an 11 personal year, instead of just a 2, you'll also feel that great spiritual intuitive connection launching you out in the world. But also the downside of it is, if you're in an 11 personal year, you will feel very sensitive and you will feel what other people are feeling. You'll kind of hear their thoughts. So you're going to have to make sure you're not going through an 11 personal year just getting your feelings hurt all the time. If you're in a 3 personal year, it's much more social and playful and creative and fun and with people. You might be going out doing a lot of social events, but you're also being creative and fun and sparky, and you've got to work on opening your heart, because the 3 is the energy of great ideas, but not so much about feeling the heart. Then you hit a 4 year, and 4 is a year where you have to dig in and get some hard work done. Now, I've hit 4 years. Actually, last year was a 22 4 year, and I had 2 books come out. I published 2 new books and was on about 1 million podcasts, and it was all really good for my career and my work, but it all was piling up on me to the point where I just felt overwhelmed almost all the time. And I had to just kind of quit complaining about it and say, look, it's a 4 year, you just get the work done, you get your body in shape and get strong. And then all of that hard work pays off in the future of the cycle. And it always does. And then if it's a 22, then you have bigger things happening in that year. So mine was a 22 4 year last year. And my work was really definitely shifting up to the 22. Then if you're in a 5 personal year, you will have unexpected adventure. You'll have unexpected new people coming into your life, a lot of sense of freedom and change and adventure. If you're going to fall in love, a 5 year is when the world is suddenly very drawn to you and you feel attractive, you know, like you walk in a grocery store and people are flirting with you and you don't understand why. And then you realize, oh, I'm in a 5 personal year. I'm putting out that energy. And then if you're in a 6 personal year, it's a lot more about turning back to family, to friends, to home, to health, turning back to that inner circle. I have always had a loved one cross when I'm in a 6 year. My first husband, Paul, crossed when I was in a 6. My father crossed when I was in a 6. And I often wonder if Jean will cross when I'm in a 6. But it means that your attention is really put into the care and nurture of that person. But it's a good thing. It's also when we might get pregnant and start a family. And also when we feel more connected to our community than ever. When we're in a 7 personal year, we are drawn upwards, so to speak. We're drawn to focus on the abstract ideas, mysticism, spirituality, artistic endeavors, questioning the meaning of life. But you'll also in a 7 personal year feel very self-reflective, like analyzing yourself and wondering if you're good enough. I mean, that's part of the 7. The 7 is about asking why all the time, even asking why we are a certain way and why the world is a certain way. The 8 personal year, it's a completely different energy. Like we're having 2024 as an 8 universal year. Whew, we're going to get thrown out into the world in a big way of having to vote, having to elect a president, having to worry about money and economy and all this stuff, and possibly war. These are big issues that come with an 8. If it's a personal year 8, you will have to deal with money, whether that means you suddenly inherit a ton of money and you're rich, or whether it means you start a company and you get wealthy, or you haven't paid attention to money and now you've got to get your bills in order. In an 8 year, it'll be the primary thing you're focused on. If you're in a 9 personal year, you're wrapping up the cycle of everything you've learned in the last 9 years. And it's a culmination, meaning that everything you've studied and tried to achieve will finalize. You will achieve it. You will feel like you've really learned and accomplished, and you'll be recognized for that. But at the same time, everything in your life will be up for review. Do I want this relationship to move forward into my new cycle with me or not? So there is a lot of letting go, a lot of surrender that happens in a 9 personal year. And then we have the Saturn returns that are always times of great transition. The first one in our late 20s, 27, 28, 29, always important to go back in your life and say, what was I dreaming of doing at that time in my life? Who did I begin to realize that I was? What kind of life did I want to create for myself? What was my spiritual belief or my spiritual awakening at that time? Many, many people go through a huge career change in their late 20s, and that Saturn return. They may have been a business major in college because everybody wanted them to do that. And they hit the Saturn return and they have to completely reinvent because it's not their true work. I lost my husband, Paul, when I was 29. Big Saturn return lesson, because then I was launched on my alternative spiritual path from then on. And then we hit the second Saturn return in our late 50s. And that is when everything we began to know about ourselves or to study or to learn in the first Saturn return, it comes to a fruition in the second Saturn return. So the soul is saying, hey, do you remember who you once thought you were or wanted to be, or what you once knew about yourself? This is the time in your life where you have to bring it to fruition. It's now or never. So if you're off path, if you've been in a miserable career, unhappy relationship, just kind of sleeping through the life, that second Saturn return can really be hard. It can be divorce, it can be bankruptcy, a career ending. But in the long run, it gets you back on your path. Now, if you're already on the path, doing your true work, when you hit that second Saturn return, it's just turning up the heat of getting it out in the world in an even bigger way than you could ever imagine. And it's intense, whether it's good or bad. It's just a time in your life when you're going to remember it. Sometimes people get a health crisis at that time because healing calls them to center back on themselves and to grow and align with their true self more authentically. And then as you look at these charts here, so I will go to, who can I pick on? So for fun, I'll just go and look at, did you say your name is Jamie? Who's my Aquarius 11? I'm forgetting.
Yes, Jamie.
Jamie, yeah. So Jamie, this is your path here, your path chart here. And you would write your year of birth over here. And you told me that. So it would be 1980 that you would write right over here. And then 1981, 1982, 1983, 84, 85, 86, 87. And you would go, oh, look, And when I was 7 years old, I hit my first 9-year reinvention point. And what happened to me then? Often that'll be something like a move, a family move, or parents' divorce, or some sort of problem at home, or a new school. There will be some change that you remember in that first 9-year reinvention point. And believe it or not, before I do every client, I fill out a chart like this for them, and I do their all their years of their life along this side of it, so that when I'm going through it with them, I can say, you know, look, you had this turning point when you were 16 and 17. What were you learning? What was happening? What choices were you making? And then here, and oh, look, you hit that Saturn return when you were in a beginning of a cycle. So how did that unfold for you? And then how do we compare this Saturn return to the second Saturn return? What is the parallel in your life that connects these two Saturn returns? And as you go back and study every 9-year reinvention point and how those Saturn returns relate to each other, it's like having a soul review while you're still in the body, because you can go, oh, look, when all that change happened, it was just the end of a cycle. It wasn't my fault. It was part of my life plan. And, you know, when I'm sure I've told you all that when I was, let's see, how old am I? I'm 73, but it was here when Gene, my husband, was diagnosed with intense cancer, and we had to sell our Colorado home and move to Arizona, knowing nobody, so he could be at Mayo Clinic. So at the age of 68 and 69, my life kind of started over here in Arizona. And now I'm 70, turning 73 this year. And these years have been incredible for me, with a new life here in Arizona and new friends, and my work feeling better and more on path than ever. So the reinvention points, even if they feel like the end of the world, they're not. They're just you peeling away what needs to be released. Any questions? Well, I really hope that you'll all fill out your path, you know, these charts for yourself, because you'll find them so insightful. And then if you have children, do it for the child, or your spouse, do it for the spouse. And you will get so much insight into what they're going through and where they are in their journey. You know, I was just looking here at my daughter. You know, she's right in this part of the journey, the Saturn return. And, you know, she's definitely had her struggles trying to become an acupuncturist and take her board exams. And yet she just started an 8 personal year, and finally she passed her board exam last week. So she's going to be able to make her living as an acupuncturist right on time in her 8 personal year. And, you know, my daughter, some days she believes in numerology, and other days she just wants to be her own person and not believe in anything her mother believes in, which is totally normal. But when I told her that, yes, you've passed your board, you're in an 8 year, it's about power and career and owning your place in the world, she was like, yes, that feels exactly right. So let the numbers really help you. Let them explain your changes to you so that you don't beat yourself up about them. These birth path charts are your mini soul review that you can do to get so much insight into your life here on Earth. So, any questions? Well, I think
So if they fall really close to a year within it's a little, I mean, mine are very key, but I can't tell if it was, you know, if I was, you know, say 57 or 56 when this happened, depending on when. I mean,
yeah.
how do I determine that?
So for example, here's your path.
Yeah, the 57 is the one I was looking at. That's the year my son passed in 2017, which is,
Well, look at that. That was a 9-year ending and the Saturn return, and your sun crosses. That's a sign that it was your agreed upon greatest moment of spiritual awakening.
yeah, I couldn't tell if it was that year or the year before. So yeah, so but it looks like I thought it was the 9 year, the 57. Yeah.
Well, if you put all the years of your birth, of your life, along next to these black squares, it'll tell you precisely, you
Yeah,
know,
I
what year.
think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, it sounds crazy that I do that for every client, but it's I kind of enjoy it. Like I'll go, oh, I've got a 33 path client. So I get to map out their whole life and their year of birth and everything and kind of see the big picture of it. It informs you intuitively, because then when I do the session, I'll be asking them questions about these different changing times in their life. And we always find the symmetry to it. We always find, gee, look what you've overcome. And at each 9-year cycle, you stepped up a little more and a little more and a little more. You know, it's just so beautiful to see this bird's eye view of your life. It really lifts you into the soul's wisdom. And that's the whole point of numerology, in my opinion, is to lift out of the left brain logic mind and lift into our soul's wisdom. And the personal year cycles do that so profoundly. In fact, teaching in person, my favorite part was when everybody would have the workbook and we'd be all on the floor filling out our personal year cycles and then sharing with a partner what patterns we see in our journey. And people would just be having these aha moments, you know, so helpful. So do it with your family. If your husband or your wife or your kids will participate in it with you, it's very fun and very insightful. It also gives you the ability to say, well, I understand what my partner is going through right now. They're in a 9-year, and so I'm not going to push them to behave a certain way. I'm going to allow them to let go of what needs to be let go of and go on their own journey of learning and surrender. And when my husband, Gene, gets in a 9-year, I just go, okay, well, you do what you have to do, you know. And I remember a few decades ago when we were together and he hit a 9-year, he was so letting go of so much stuff with his business and his life, and it was really depressing him, you know. And I just kept saying, don't worry, there's a whole new cycle starting and it'll all come in a new way and you'll end up liking it better. And that turned out to be true. And that's the advantage of knowing these cycles. You can comfort your children, comfort your friends and your partner by helping them see that a 9-year or a Saturn return is not the end of the world. All right. So on that note, next week, we will be doing mini readings for people. So be sure to have your birth path stuff calculated for me so that if I go, give me your information, you can tell me, and then I can do a mini reading for you. And we'll review any questions you have about any of this material. And if we have time, I would like to take you on a little journey to the divine realms to talk to your guides and get some guidance. Would you like that?
Yes.
All righty. So
Yeah,
that's next
yeah.
week. All right,
great.
everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's just
you.
a blessing to be with all of you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Sue.
Bye. Love you.